most of you know Helen. You probably listened to her podcasts. Helen is one of the most distinguished curators, art historians in America, and we're really thrilled of her support and interest in Kohshin's work. I often listen to Helen's podcasts. Most recently on the David Zwerner podcast. They're really, really good. And so, what a privilege to have Helen here. So, Kohshin I've known for some time. We followed his work. He was in several of our shows already. And this solo exhibition is something we've been talking about for a number of years. And this show is really special. It's of a new level of accomplishment in his work. He'll be talking about that with Helen. Something very special is you see his community here. These are his friends, people he collaborates with. So there's an extra bonus here that it's not just fantastic painting, it's a view of this special community. So let me turn it over to Helen and Kohshin. And again, thank you very much for coming.
Hi.
I love being in LA. In New York, I'd have to be like, come on now, reply, but not here. So thank you for that. Thank you, Jeffrey, for such a nice introduction.
Thank you, Jeffrey.
Hi, Kohshin.
Hi, Helen.
So I think I started going to do studio visits with you. We were talking about it last night at dinner.
Yeah.
I think it's about 8 years ago.
Something like that, yeah.
I started going to your studio.
Mm-hmm.
And you're young now. You were so young then.
Yeah, I was a little baby for
You
sure.
were such a little baby painter. And I felt very honored to be with you as you were figuring out so much of your visual language and so much of what you wanted to do. And I think that in this show, I feel like, I think I even told you on opening night, I was like, he's found his lane. Like, here we are, you know? Here we are at the public beginning of your career, and it's really, really exciting to me. So I have, one of the things I love about interviewing artists with an audience is I can actually ask Kohshin some stuff now that I probably wouldn't ask him if we were just chilling together in the studio, you know, because I wouldn't be so formal and I wouldn't push him maybe there, like in the way, there's just something about a public conversation actually allows you to do some stuff that you couldn't do in private, just like a private conversation totally allows you to do stuff you couldn't do in public. So
now I'm scared.
no, don't be scared.
Like,
Don't be scared. But so I've got 4 questions for you, and you know the answers. Because if you don't know the answers, then
Then we're screwed.
well, then nobody knows the answers. So, you know, so don't be nervous. I think it's clear that you are a portraitist, right? Like, from the jump, you have been making pictures of other humans. And that's a very intimate act, to represent another human being. And I know Jeffrey said, you know, these are people in your community, your friends, but you've also done commission portraits. Like, you actually have done both. You've like painted your people and you've painted a commission.
Yeah.
And I wanted to just start there. Like, what is the difference for you between when you're painting someone you know very well and when you're painting someone who is so enamored of your work that they're entrusting you with their image?
Right. A thoughtful question, and before I answer that, I'll just say thank you to everybody for coming on this beautiful Saturday. See some familiar faces. Where to start? I think for me, like when it comes to painting people in the show, it usually starts from a conversation, like where I'll be out at a gallery or out at a dinner with friends or house party, whatever that it may be. And you just like something sort of just clicks where you're just like, oh, this was a really nice conversation. Let's come to my studio next week and maybe, or I'll go to your space. A lot of this is in their spaces, in their studios. So can I come by, like see what you're up to and maybe like take some photos? We'll just continue this conversation. It's like, it starts out of a piqued interest and a mutual sort of almost like love of the game as a conversation, usually around art, just life, whatever's happening at that time. When it comes to a commission, yeah, it's the reverse because it's someone usually coming to me. And so the objective is a little different. So when it comes to something like, even like D. Alvarado or Kelsey Lou here, I'm so present in like being in Kelsey's studio where I'm just like looking at things, but I'm also like just seeing how she is present on that day and just being ultra present in our conversation, that as I have my camera, I'm just like, you know, I'm rarely like, oh, stop there, hold that pose and do that. It's literally us talking and like just catching them looking out of a window and just.
Can I interrupt you for a
Yes.
second? So you made this gesture like the camera was down here and you
Yeah.
said it's not up here.
Yeah.
So you don't bring the camera in between you
I
and your
try not
sitter?
to.
Interesting.
Because what I've noticed in those moments is that people change when you bring it up high, because I'm also blocking my eyes when I
Right.
do that. So then it cuts the eye contact. But if I'm here, then we could still have a conversation and I can just, so like
Right.
Chris Gibbs' one over here is like a perfect sort of ID of like me doing that, like where he's looking out of a window catching a thought and my camera just, you know, is just here. And I'm like, oh, I see it, cool, but I could still be in the midst of conversation. And so in the midst of a commission, you know, where someone comes and is like, hey, I love what you do. I would love, and sometimes I would love to see my daughter in the way that you see people. Or I'd love to see myself, you know, Joy Simmons, one of the like first fine art world commissions that I did was her. And she's like, I love the way that you see the world, and I would love to see myself through your eyes. Later did I find out it was actually a commission that she wanted for her own birthday. And that was like even a more special thing. I didn't know that until after I gave her the portrait. But yeah, but then when it's that, it's usually like, okay, I'm being almost like on assignment. Someone usually has an objective, like the commissioner is like, hey, I want to see myself this way, or my daughter, and then it's really me, like sometimes I know these people for years, and sometimes I've never met you before.
Right.
So then it's like, oh, like, can we at least have lunch first to like see if this is even a fit? Usually 95% of the time it is, but then sometimes it's just like, maybe I'm not the guy, because like, you have to also meet me in the process. And it's, when it comes to a commission, it's once that process is sort of met halfway and I'm able to see them and they want to be vulnerable in the process and have a conversation, you know, sometimes an hour, sometimes 2 hours, and it's not just me painting them. It's more than the sort of technical aspect of just making a painting. Because when I'm making something, I'm thinking, oh, your kids are going to grow up with this painting. Your family members are going to come to your dinner parties and they're going to want to see this work, and there's a gravity of almost like the respect that I have to attend to that, and the sort of historical nature of it, but then also like the insular lineage that has with grandkids and people that are like,
Right.
oh, that's Nona on the wall, that's da-da-da on the wall, and
Right.
what that can do to a 4-year-old, you know, that's something that I really attend to when it comes to commissions and things. So that's like kind of a little bit of the difference.
So this person you meet at a party and you're talking and you like want to continue it, is that, I don't know how to ask my question without seeming really shallow, so I'm just going to go there. Is it about the way they look? Are you like, oh, damn, that face is interesting, I want to paint that face? Or is it more this like higher level, like you're so elevated and you always make me feel a little like trashy.
That's exactly how I feel. I
Because
feel
I'm
the
from New
opposite.
York and Kohshin's from LA.
Oh, no.
And so, like, is it about like this interaction you're having, or are you like, that person's face is bonkers to me, and I want to get in there and deal with it?
I don't know if anyone's ever asked that, but I think it's like a combination of both. It's a very like holistic experience. I think, because even like looking at you now, I'm like, oh, the skylight and the da-da-da-da, like, I see everything. So sometimes you catch someone's eye and the light hits them and I see it. And I'm like, oh, I could see the painting already before anything even starts. So then it's sometimes like a visual cue that I'll receive, but then sometimes it's just like, oh, I'm interested in having more of a conversation, because with all of these people, now that these exist in the world, we're going to keep coming back to each other. It's not like, oh, I painted you and I'm, later.
Right.
So even with, Kelsey Lou, who's never been painted in this way, it strengthens connections, and that anywhere she goes in the world, this exists. And so it's really something that I feel like when I was in college, it used to be very like, oh, like you have a nice face, like, all right, but yeah, it's much more, it's deeper than that, because I have to also want to be friends with them and attend to the gravity of like, anywhere I go, now we've created something too. And so it's almost like this like forever link that, when I end up having like my solo show at the Louvre or the Met or something like that, like all of those people are going to be in the room.
Right.
And I got to want that to happen. And so it's a real assignment of that to make it something that isn't so shallow.
Right. All right, my second question. I know, because I've visited you in your studio several times, that you work alone. Like you don't have assistants, people aren't mixing your paints, all the things, people aren't painting the backgrounds for you. But with this show, there are these extraordinary frames. And while I know you taught yourself how to make ceramics, I know you did not teach yourself how to be a woodworker at this
Not
level. Because this is some very serious craftsmanship in these frames. And I wondered if you could just talk a little bit about what it was like to branch out and collaborate around. I just know you to be so, I know you have an incredible attention to detail and to touch. And so what was it like to do this kind of collaboration?
Yeah. I don't think Lucas is here, but Lucas Renault is the woodsmith who made these frames. And so he had, when I was first dating Cameron, we had met at some house party that they had friends at, and he was just like, hey man, like, oh, you're an artist? Cool. He's like, if you ever need any wood stuff, just let me know. And I was just like, yeah, like I paint. I'm never going to need wood stuff. I was like, I'm never going to need your help, but I appreciate it. Right. And 7-8 years later, here I was like, hey, I finally got something.
This is like a scene from The Godfather.
Oh,
like,
totally.
You're banking favors
totally,
at parties.
100%.
I like
100%. But yeah, then like once I got to having my solo show in Venice, Italy, which primarily just had ceramic vessels on plinths, paintings on walls. They were both very separate. Once I came back home, I was like, no, I want to seek some way to integrate it. But then I was thinking a lot about the like altar works that I saw in Venice, in the shrines in Japan. And I was like, oh, that's something. Let me see what that looks like for me. And so then I like started drawing up these designs, and I was like, oh, I have no idea who to make them. And then I remembered I had Lucas's number, and I reached out to him, and he was just stoked to hear from me, and like stoked. He's like a master collaborator. he's like, you ask him, he's like just so ready to get down. And so when I reached out to him and I showed him these designs, I was like so scared. Because like I was like, this is like my first venture into like interior design. I haven't done anything like this before. I don't know if it's gonna work. And yeah, it was like a brand new concept. So on top of the collaborative part, I was like, this is like totally brand new for me. Like I'm traditionally just, a painter. So now I'm like really venturing into like making artworks. And so there's a relinquishing of sort of like the presence of it. Cause like I will make something to a certain degree. Like I'll make the paintings and I'll make the ceramics. And then I'm like, okay, Lucas, your turn. And like, it's sort of like this blind faith that you're like, okay, he's actually working on it. Because when I go to the studio, I'm like, oh, I know exactly what I'm doing. I know that I'm working on it. I can see the product. When someone else is in a whole nother studio, I'm just like, I have no idea what he's doing.
And I would just want to clarify for a second. So when you're like, okay, Lucas, it's your turn. Yeah. Is it his turn because he's making a drawing you've given him? Or does he say to you, have you thought about this? Or like this wood, that wood? Like what's that conversation like?
I came to him. He was like, okay, I was like, oh, I have this idea. I usually use walnut in my paintings from my framer. And he was like, oh, like I have walnut, but like, let me show you some other options. So he had oak. What else did he have? He had mahogany and he had walnut. And I had never seen walnut unvarnished and like untreated. And so that's what these frames are. And so when I was like, okay, your turn is like, hey, I made this design. Now I want to like see how you interpret it and like make it real. And so there's a couple moves in here that within the frameworks that I'm not a woodsmith and like I don't necessarily know how wood moves or needs to be constructed to, I think, withstand time, that he innately just made them and like it came out so beautiful. And so, yeah, but it's made me more open to, I think, collaborating and being more open to like relinquishing parts of the process because I want to like make the things that I can make, and I understand that there's people who are like masters at what they do, and I love the idea of making woodworks, but if I already know a master, let me put you on a pedestal and like lift you up and work with you. And so I could see how it works, and I can just be here and like operate in the best way that I know that I can.
You dropped something I just want to pick up a little bit. You said when you were in Japan, and I hadn't thought about these coming out of a Japanese tradition. And forgive me, I don't know the word, but in most Japanese interiors, there's a kind of an inset space where like a scroll is hung, or maybe there's an ikebana. It's very much I've been in those interiors when you walk in, and it's sort of formal and it's really quiet. It's very considered. And I hadn't thought about that. Was that where you had the kind of like aha moment of, I think I want to do something like that with these pictures?
Yes, when Cameron and we'd go to Japan and we'd spend like 2 weeks there. And so when you go to a shrine, in temples, you're walking through these like huge spaces, but then there's like micro sort of shrines and things. And so like you'll see sort of like this framework protecting this scroll, or like this image, this painting, this drawing on watercolor or whatever that it may be. And then there's like ceramics, and then there's like the little incense things. And you're like, oh, that felt like something. I was like, I don't know what that is yet, but I'm just going to take a picture. And then like you would go into people's homes or shops, and you're like, oh, that looked the same as that. But then like that area also reminded me of like my grandma's living room in Mexico, but then that also then reminded me of the altars at the Galleria Accademia in Venice, Italy, where there's altar works from like 1500s that are paintings of, religious stories in these like altars that also had little ceramics and bowls and dishes and things. And so then I was like, oh, they're all sort of connected. And that was really something where I was thinking that I can find myself in it. Because then when I came to these, I wasn't thinking about it until after I started working with Lucas and he made the thing real. And once I saw it in real life, like with the woodworks and putting the ceramics in it, I was like, oh, this is an altar.
Right.
I was like, that's exactly what, but it's an altar to the living. You know, usually we get our altars or our paintings even once someone's passed away. And so I was like, no, like this is something for Nia, you know, this is something for Kelsey and Dee and, you know, Mario and Mia, that people, first of all, like they can go see themselves and be present with themselves. And I can do that in the process. And then ultimately we, you know, open up the floor and that people can be present and stop. And I think ultimately that's what an altar is somewhere where you can stop in the midst of the craziness of life and be present and celebrate and honor. And so that's ultimately what these became for me through my travels and just seeing things in Japan and Italy that are like 1,000 years old, which you can't really get here in the States. Right. You know, LACMA has a vessel from Pompeii that's from 2000 BC, and it's like pristine. And when I saw that, and next to an Adam Silverman vessel that's from, you know, 2023, I was like, oh, like that, there's 4,000 years in between these, but there's something innately connecting them as well.
I love that phrase that you use, an altar for the living. That is a very, like I got to think about that. Yeah. Like I, you know, because it's so firmly in my head that an altar is the honoring of the past, of people who have passed. So to think about an altar for the living is really, that's a beautiful phrase. Okay, so for me, I think that like more than a frame, it's hard to call them frames. I think that's like a default word that we're using because it's conventional and we understand it is doing that. It is framing the painting. But they're clearly behaving like something else, like maybe an altar for the living. But one word I think we could use is tableau. They do sort of set up a tableau quality, and the inclusion of the ceramics. The art historian in me is like, oh, if I'm getting to tableau and I'm getting to the inclusion of objects, then I'm sort of starting to move into a terrain called still life. Like portraiture is rubbing up against still life. But the thing that I think is like really strong in them is the sense that as a viewer, I am very aware these things have been arranged. Like, so they've been painted, that's a verb, and they've been arranged. And the arranging is clearly not happenstance. It's not, you know how like sometimes like you make an outfit and you're like, and then this worked with this, and I was like, snap, I had, you know, and then there's another outfit that you've been like working on. And I raised the outfit thing pointedly because it's a follow-up question. Yes. But could you just talk about what it means that you've added the activity of arranging to your activity of painting?
Yeah, that's like it's an interesting question because the paintings are so me showing up to the studio every day and like making marks. And so when it came to even installing the show, you know, half of the work hadn't been framed yet. So we, you know, Lucas came to the studio and like made the frameworks in his studio and we installed them in this space. And so when it came to the arranging, I brought every ceramic. I probably brought like 100 ceramic cups and bowls.
Oh, wow. Okay. So you haven't figured that all out but in advance?
No.
Oh,
so
okay.
I
Keep
designed
talking.
like the cubbies and like the shelvings.
Right.
And Lucas made them, but then when it came, I don't know what's going in them. And so
okay.
It's a much more almost like intuitive process when it comes to it, because I'm here and like everything's going up on the walls, and I have like 100 vessels and like cups and bowls that I'm plugging in and taking out and putting in, and it really becomes more of like a what feels right in this shelving unit and with this person and this space, more than what looks good from like a visual sort of standpoint. So there's a couple, like more than a couple movements in like each piece where there like might be a cup or like a little bowl that like shouldn't be there. Or they're like even like looking at this like Kelsey Lou one where there's like, you know, there's like this like sort of system that was set up where everything's, you know, broken up into rule of threes, the rule of thirds, and then there's 3 here and the spacing's a little off, and then there's 5 in the middle and the spacing's a little off, and then the 5 on the right are much more balanced. But then there's that Celadon cup that's at the end and it has like this, you know, chip out of it. And so then it's thinking about, okay, like how do I also, on top of having it feel sound to the person that I'm portraying here, how do I also make the frame look like someone's living with these? And that there's like life that passed through here, and it's not just me setting up something that looks pretty. Like I was talking with Cameron the other day, like so much of like these interior design things we see on Instagram or Pinterest, the houses are way too clean.
Yeah, I know.
And I'm like,
drives me crazy.
That painting would never look good with that bookshelf. There'd be I go to anybody's house, they have thousands of books. Nobody only has 5 books. So like,
although I would love to have just 5 books, and if anyone would like to come to my house and take my 1,000 books, I would be happy.
Exactly. So like thinking about like that cup, like most installations that I've seen in my life, that those cups with those chips wouldn't be in those installations.
Right.
Because they'd probably be discarded because like that little thing broke off in the kiln and there's like, oh, chip in it, gotta throw it away. And so there's things like that, like even on this D. Alvarado one, there's a bowl down there where like part of the bowl just exploded. Right. You know, and it's like, but that's like the beauty of it, that once it goes into the kiln, I can't control it. I fire in a gas kiln at cone 10, which is almost like 3,000 degrees. Sometimes things explode. Sometimes things work out perfectly. And it's about honoring both of those versions because they're both still things that I made. And that's like part of the relinquishing where I can't control everything, but it's a part now for me to still celebrate what I choose to celebrate. And that's how those sort of movements come out in the sort of arranging of everything.
So anyone who knows you knows you always come correct. Like your style is just so beautiful, so on point. Like I don't always dress like this, for instance, for a Saturday afternoon talk. Sometimes I just wear jeans and a hoodie, but for Kohshin there would be no way. So one of the things I wanted to, because I never see, like, you're not about fashion, you're totally about style, right? So is there a relationship between like how you put an outfit together for yourself, because you have a very distinct way of doing that, and the way you're assembling or arranging these pictures? Like it was one of the things I thought when I came in on opening night. I was like, oh, he's brought some of that kind of extraordinary attention to detail at the level of garment and the body into the pictures themselves, into the presentation of the pictures. And like, is that a conscious thing, an unconscious thing? What's going on there?
I think like as I get older, it's all just becoming one stream of thought. And I think as I was younger, it used to be more constructed. And I think even you knew my like earlier work where I was leaning so heavily on like my technical ability.
Yeah.
There wasn't much of like a flourish or like a personality sort of pop. Yep. It was very much like, that I could make a painting.
Yep.
I'm going to show you. It was more about like proving to other people, I think. And so as I think get to this show, which is like 15 years in the making, because more than that, when I left college, my first goal was to have a solo show in LA.
Right.
And it took this long to do it. And so there was a lot of, during that time, and you were instrumental in sort of paths within those times where I was like, oh, I have to make the show. I have to prove to people that I can like do it and then like make this happen. And whose hand do I have to shake to like make this a reality? And it just didn't happen. But then there was like other things that happened, like a solo show in Dallas and New York and Venice, Italy. And I was like, okay, that's cool. I'll take those.
Right.
And so I think like getting to, I think the past 2 years, which I've been making this show, a lot of life has happened, but I think a lot of like learning about myself, and I think everything's sort of like more crystallizing into like one stream. So the way that I'm attending to myself is going to be the way that I'm attending to my family or you in this conversation, or the artworks that I make, and showing up to the conversations that I'm having with my friends. Because it's all a matter of, I think, especially during the pandemic, I started, both Delphin and I, who's one of my biggest style inspirations, my brother Delphin, thinking about, why are we wearing sweatpants everywhere? Everyone can do that here, but I'm also grateful to be alive. And so especially during the pandemic, where I didn't even see my family for 6 months because I didn't want to get anybody sick. So then it's okay, if I'm finally stepping out the house, I want to step out the house. And then you watch old Cary Grant and Sidney Poitier movies where dudes are going to the grocery store dialed in. Yeah, I want to and once you put on a dress shirt and a blazer, you're you're unstoppable anywhere you go. It really feels that way. And I remember I used to intern at the Grove when I was in college, and I remember even being 18 years old, and there was 15, 18-year-old dudes walking around in suits, because we had to wear suits, we had to have our shoes shined and the whole thing, and people were just oh, and you see people stand up straitter, and you, even at 18, I just saw it. And so I think for me at this point, it's how can I attend to that before it's about anybody else? How can I attend to that for myself? So even when I'm in the studio, I'll wear a button-up shirt. I'll roll the sleeves up. I'll make sure, even at home, and Cameron will tell you, everything's ironed. My sweatpants are ironed. My khakis are even a t-shirt.
Right.
Because I don't want to see myself in the mirror with a crinkled up shirt. Right. Because what does that do subconsciously to your head, knowing that I just threw something on and I'm just chilling today. But I got to answer all these emails or jump on these Zooms or have conversations where you're talking about thousands upon thousands of dollars, and I'm just chilling. I'm no, I'm, even if I go to the grocery store, I don't know who I'm going to see.
Right.
I don't know what that interaction is going to be. So for me, it's, especially coming out of the pandemic and finally stepping outside, that whole, the idea of preparation. And my dad's always said, if you stay ready, you don't have to get ready.
Right.
So that's ever so present now to me as a young old man.
Oh, that's so good. Okay, my last question, in many ways, it's the big one. We're sort of easing up to it. So both the ceramics, and we've talked about how the frames are more than a frame, right? That they're a tableau. And frames are things that hold paintings, and ceramics are our original vessel. Humans, one of the things I think is so meaningful about ceramics is every human civilization throughout time has made a vessel in order to hold a thing. Like that is actually core to being a human being. And so if you added arranging to the painting, the other word I wanted to ask you about that I think that the frames are doing, because they're not only framing, I feel like they're holding. They're literally holding the paintings, but they're also holding the ceramics. The ceramics they're always vessels, they're not little objets or little, figures, right? They're very pointedly, it seems to me, they're vessels. And I wondered if you could just talk a little bit about what holding as a verb, what is it as an activity and what is it as a metaphor? What's at play or what's at stake for you or do you even resonate with the idea that so much of what seems to be happening in this work, and this is what I mean by you found your lane, is this really overwhelming sense I have of holding, of watching something be held, of being aware that someone is doing the work of holding, and of what is my job as a viewer, when I'm in relationship to holding. So I just wanted to know if that has any resonance with you, and if it does have resonance, what is the resonance?
I think for me, and as you talked about vessels and every civilization through time, ceramic vessels have feet and shoulders and collars and
nice bodies.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
so once I started creating them and I've only been doing ceramics for 5+ years, so it's super, I'm still a baby in it. I'm still so excited about it. I'm still learning. I'm still late night just Googling just terms that come to my head and just trying to figure things out. And that's part of it where you're just oh, it's all so connected to what I already do in thinking about painting people and figures. And even earlier on in my career, I always regarded my paintings as vessels to hold space, to hold the spirit of somebody. I very early on understood the gravity of what it is to paint somebody, because I've also had experiences where people would tell me oh, this dude painted me and I didn't okay it, or he found my picture on Instagram, said he wanted to paint it, I said no, and he did it anyway and sold it for $200,000, and so for me, there's so much of a responsibility that comes to, I think, when you're in the act of having the conversation and me taking photos and things like that, of being respectful and holding space and being just being ultimately so present. Because even if the photos that I take, you're holding someone's image and their likeness and their joy and the presence, and there's a lot within that. And then I'm drawing it, and then I'm painting it, and then I'm putting in these frameworks, and then putting the ceramics. And so I think even now making the ceramics, even the larger ones that are spread throughout the space, I think about them as holding whatever that needs to be held, and sometimes that's a smile or a spirit or a sadness that you can put in a jar. And once again, thinking about old vessels that used to hold just rice, and they had so much of a purpose. These are much more, I think, spiritual in that way, but also something still so tactile, because they're still ceramics, even though they're fine art pieces and not meant to be touched. There's the dichotomy of that, of wanting to create something that feels inviting, but that is also protecting itself in a way. Mm-hmm. And so thinking about holding, I'm doing the best that I can to clear myself as a vessel so that I can take that on from someone for the painting duration and essentially the rest of my life. But for that, and then to give it back to the painting, so then that lives in its own way, and that the painting holds space, the artworks hold space and time. And I think that's where I think the title Still Life really comes from for me, is thinking like that's a real still life. These are, it's not an inanimate object. It's not a skull, memento mori. It's not, back in the day, whereas, 1500s, they would have a globe. And it's like, hey, I'm rich and I know stuff. Here's my globe, or here's my red velvet curtains. It's like, no, like these are real people. And I love that people, when they came to the opening, like saw them and they're like, oh, that's them. And it's like, oh no, this is a moment in time that is now encapsulated of, Kelsey Lou's in the midst of her studio here making her album, and her mood board is in the background. And her studio is probably never going to look that way again. But then that's that. And that's like why it makes it so special. I love going to like the Picasso Museum in Barcelona, and every painting has a story of like why he painted this person, how they even came to be friends. And like now that adds provenance and like importance to the painting. And so that's why this is so important to me, because all like, especially within the show, like there's paintings and paintings.
Yeah.
And like in Dee's case, there's pieces from this show in that artwork. And so it's so insular to this show that this image of Dee will never happen again. And this relationship of me and her is now encapsulated in this artwork. And so it's more than anything, it's really holding on to that time and protecting it in a way. I think that's what like you saying and speaking about holding resonates for me.
That's really beautiful. I mean, back to the altar of the living. Do you know, I never know in LA, like, do you know what a mitzvah is? Okay, so like a mitzvah is...
Oh, like a good deed.
Like you could do a good deed every day.
Yeah.
In the Jewish tradition, you're supposed to do a mitzvah every day. But you're supposed to do a mitzvah every day, not just because you're supposed to do a mitzvah every day. You're supposed to do a mitzvah every day because part of Jewish theology, as I understand it, I'm not myself Jewish, is that the world is imagined upon creation as a perfect vessel that is broken. It is broken into billions of shards. And the task of the living is to try every day to repair the vessel, with the understanding that there is no way to repair the vessel. Like the vessel is broken, but yet you still must try to repair the vessel. And so you do so with a mitzvah, with a small gesture. And I wonder if, I don't know, there's something about that energy in the show for me. Like when you were just talking about like that one of the things that the paintings are doing is holding time. And that one of the things you were thinking about is that someone's children or grandchildren will see the image, you're holding the time of the past encounter while remembering that there will be many future encounters, which makes the painting even more like an offering, like a reparative gesture to the great brokenness of our humanity.
Totally.
And there's something like really, really beautiful about that for me in this show.
Thank you. Yeah, and you broke that down so wonderfully. During the pandemic, I went through like a deep, dark web, like deep dive Google search of finding out what my name means. And so my name is Japanese. It's when you go to Japan, it's Kohshin. And so that also directly translates to Hebrew. And so the name means in both languages and in multiple other languages in the world, new light, and also God light.
Oh, wow.
And so once I found that out at 3 a.m. in the middle of the pandemic, I was like, oh, that's interesting. And I really felt that. And I think now at this point in my life, like really owning the name. You know, I think growing up, my parents had told me it meant man of honor, which that's something that also when you're like a young kid, you're also like, okay, I gotta act accordingly.
Right.
And so now I'm in like version 2 point whatever of like now being new light, being the light that can shine in all these spaces, but also show light on people.
Right.
But also like just receive the light myself.
Right.
And so now it's a balance of how can I find the joy, but also create the joy and lead with that. And so that's a real big importance to me, I think, through this show and like through these paintings now, where I think previous versions of my work were so, I think, and they needed to be, I think, reflective of the time around, you know, Trayvon Martin and protest and police brutality. And I think even now, like in, you know, 2025, 2026, like there's so much that happens in the world. And there's a lot of artists that I had talked to that were like, man, I'm just, you know, this dude in office, man, like I can't even paint.
Right.
I'm like, he doesn't know you.
Right.
And you don't know him. So how is he stopping you from painting? How is he
Right.
stopping you from making work? How are life events stopping you from actively saying something? And so for me, no matter what's going on in the world, like I still have my family here. I have all of you people here. I have the works that I want to make and the conversations that inspire me and the people in the world that inspire me, you included. Why not continue to follow that and to make artworks about it and have conversations about it and be under a skylight, you know, on a Saturday?
Right.
And so that's been, on top of like finding the light in a day, it's also about creating it.
Right.
And that's like absolutely paramount to me.
Everybody's got a little bit of light under the sun.
It's true.
I want to open it up if there's anyone in the audience who's got questions.
Got a couple.
Yeah, it's right here.
Hi, Kim.
Can I give you this microphone so we can get
Yeah.
you on the tape?
I remember you, don't worry.
I was gonna lay low. I would love to hear about what first drew you to ceramics, and I know that you said that you love learning, but also what keeps you tethered to it, because I know that it's a practice that requires a lot of patience and has a lot of disappointment.
Yeah.
So if you could just talk about that. Thank
Are
you.
you a ceramicist now? There you go. So I started ceramics maybe about 5 years ago because my wife Cameron thought I needed a hobby. And she said, you paint so much, like you really just got to do something else. And I was like, I'm a painter, I don't want ceramics. And so I went begrudgingly for my birthday, and she got me, when we had a ceramics duo lesson and a couple of my friends joined, and I was like such a skeptic about it. And I grabbed this ball of clay and I'm like, whatever, man. Let me just get through this. I'm hungry. Like, let me just like go eat, man. Like, I'm just like, whatever. And so I get this ball of clay and you do it, and I'm like struggling. And then you make a bowl. And I was like, oh, that bowl wasn't there before. And so that really led me down the wave of, let me see what else I can make. And like, but also like, what is this feeling of this like newness? Because I primarily hadn't done other things other than painting for the past 15 plus years. So I was like, finally something new. And then I was like, oh, I'm excited about it. And then Jotham Hung, who was one of my teachers, who's here today, was someone I sought out. And I was just like, I literally took 3 months off painting. And I went on ceramics and like I worked with Jotham and learned with my friend Liz. And like I did nonstop 2 to 3 lessons a week for 3 months. And instead of watching Hulu and Netflix, and we love Hulu and Netflix if they sponsor artists, but I I like was just cranking YouTube, like nonstop, like listening to people talk about ceramics, watching people do it. I remember one class I had with Jotham, we had a class, and then it was like a week before, next until the other class. And like when I had gotten to the class, I just like went. And he was like, dude, did you get a wheel at home? I was like, no, man, I've just been fucking cranking YouTube, you know? And he's like, oh, like you got better. He's like, something in you's like connecting even just through that.
Right.
And that's when I learned the power of really like taking in I'm someone who really takes in like what I consume. Like Cameron and I watched this like thriller about, you know, affairs and people killing people and stuff like that.
Wow, got to be careful, huh?
Yeah, and so I'm like 10:30 at night. I'm like, you know, I'm like looking at Cameron like, you know, and so the thing that keeps me tethered to it is, I think the curiosity. There's so much new, but it's also one of the oldest art forms in the world, and so there's something that. I mean, I'm still so new at it, and there's still so much. And I also like I'm a freakazoid in the way that like I haven't gotten to where I want to go with it yet. But I see these like platforms that I'm approaching and getting to, and I'm like, okay, I got there. Where else? And that there's, you know, people like Jotham and Adam Silverman, who's a dear friend of mine and mentor, who had mentioned earlier, who. You know, he's been doing it as long as he has, but he's like still exploring, you know, and I'm like, how, like, that's just so inspirational to me that there's just still, it's endless, you know, and it's just another form of communication. So like the fact that this is only my second solo show with ceramics involved, I don't know where it goes. And, you know, maybe there's a show that's only ceramics, and maybe there's a show that there's only painting. Maybe there's a show that's only woodwork. I don't know. And that's like now the part where my whole world has opened up, that the unknown of it is intriguing.
Is there another question? Yeah, the guy in the hat.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Fernando. It's a pleasure to be in front of your work and to meet you today. I think one of the things that really strikes me, and it's going to strike everybody else different too, because we're all different people, but I do really appreciate the way you use the ceramics in a different position on every piece, because if we take a look at the emotion that is being evoked by each portrait, like this one here, you know, you can see that this person probably really values a foundation on her. You know, she probably really values that she has values to begin with. That gentleman over there, he's dreaming about something and he holds them high. So I kind of really love the way you did that, because it really takes us into another space, and it really amplifies, in my view, what you're trying to convey. And the fact that you kept it black and white is the polarity of things. And so I think it's really, really powerful. I love the smoothness and the energy that you strike with every brushstroke that you're putting on. So I applaud your work. It's really wonderful.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. Someone in the front, I see. There's a couple. No. Why'd you have to pick him? It's my brother.
I'm his brother.
Yeah.
Yes. I snuck in. So when you were talking about the vessels, it reminded me of a section in the Tao Te Ching that talks about how vessels are a perfect microcosm for yin and yang, because, you know, the vessel has form and beauty, but its purpose is created by the negative space that it holds. So there's a beautiful duality there that's obviously present in a lot of the work, the black and the white in the paintings, the grayscale of the paintings juxtaposed with the color of the vessels. And I wanted, obviously, the two forms, the vessels themselves and the painting, and I wanted to ask how duality kind of has informed the work, how you think about it actively, and if it's something that informed this practice relative to your other previous work.
A thoughtful question. I'm not just saying that because he's my brother. I think something that I approached a lot I think that's something that came to me in earlier work that I did, especially because I was painting, these huge busts of people and faces and, 6 feet tall faces of people. Was really but you simultaneously, someone can look so strong, but then when you're up close, you see the wateriness of their eyes and the sadness or the life in it and the vulnerability of it. And as much as, we are strong individuals and human beings, there's also so much fragility in a life. And I think ceramics perfectly conveys that. I think as you're talking about the yin and yang, the strength of a ceramic, the fact that these ceramics are born out of 3,000 degree heat and fire and are hardened to I can punch one really hard and my hand will probably crack before that does. But if I tumble it over, that thing's gonna shatter. And so there's this beautiful, I think especially as I'm talking about life, there's this beautiful song and dance of the strength and fragility and finding the balance and almost the counterpoint of, I think, what that looks like and how that's celebrated in an artwork. And that's, I think, part of why there's, cups with chips and parts that are broken. And it's also wanting to celebrate those, that it's not, everything's not perfect, and especially as we're talking about people and painting people in conversation with these ceramics that both are highlighting, I think, the same thing, is trying to find that balance of life and living and enjoying your life, but also being protective of it. And yeah, so I think thinking about the yin and yang part of it and striking that, I think, is super important to me. I think especially, once again, coming out of the pandemic, or still being in it, or whatever version we think about it, because there was so much where it's I have one day a week where I go out the house. But simultaneously I might have, 2 hand sanitizer spray bottles in my pockets, So yeah, I think that's these artworks and it's really important, I think, also having the, ceramics beyond plinths, because, everything's anchored down. But yeah, if that thing topples over, that thing's breaking, but on top of it, it's as strong as ever too. So, yeah. Thank you.
2 more questions. You've had your hand up for a minute. Go for it. Can we get
Hello. Hi.
Hi.
Hi. Name's Kelly. I'm 2 doors
Hello.
down from you in your studio.
I remember.
Yeah, I had the rare privilege of seeing these go out and being like, what the heck? I have a question about the titling of your pieces, because at your opening I thought it was really interesting looking at the image list that the name of the pieces weren't the people that you painted. So I was kind of interested how you went about titling things and what they meant and that whole process.
Thanks for the question. So the titles of my paintings used to be the people's names. And this show, I decided to not do that because I wanted something that lent a little bit more curiosity, and I think something a little bit more poetic, something a little bit more search-worthy. Because I think when, let's say Nia, because I've painted Nia a few times, there's a few paintings that are titled Nia. And so, but then once you title the painting Nia, it's oh, I know who that is. There's sort of an answer that I'm giving you. But if the painting is now, if the artwork is now Notes on a History, okay, what history? What are these notes? Where are the notes? Where can I find these notes? There's much more of an openness of a world that I wanted to build that wasn't so direct on, I think especially in the way that we live in this world. Once you know somebody's name, you feel like that's it. Oh, I know them by name, or that's that, and the buck sort of stops there. But I want people to see these and be more curious. I want them to look at the details of the ankh on her necklace and her eyes, and then span into the ceramics. And okay, if we're talking about notes on a history, how do these ceramics play? Are the ceramics the notes? What is the poetry that is inscribed in this cursive that's on the artwork? What is playing here? It sort of is now more of an invitation to a gateway to a much larger world than I think giving somebody the answer. And I think at this point I'm more interested in people having to ask questions than just me giving someone the answer or an excuse to move on to the next artwork. Because, Delphin and I go to museums all the time, and people just speed run the whole thing. And I'm just like, what are you doing? And so that I really wanted to give people, on top of making the artworks in the way that I am, a reason to pause and be present, but also, as much as we talked about considerateness, everything has to be considered, I think, at this point, especially if you're walking out the house, or I'm spending 2 years making these works. The title plays into it, the media that is listed plays into it. Previously, my works used to just be oil on canvas. That's what I used to say. But now it's gesso and graphite and high-fired stoneware and ash and marker, oil stick. So now it's on top of the title being much more open. I'm also just open to just like listing everything in the media, so that people are like, oh, where can I find the oil stick? Where can what mark is what? And there's now, so sometimes you can give people more information it's all about positioning it, to give more people information so that they can add that curiosity. But then the title is still information. I'm just not necessarily telling you where it leads. And so, yeah, thank you.
And then this one was right here with the rest.
Yeah.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Crystal. It's really wonderful afternoon. Thank you both. What's your process? Maybe you mentioned it early. I came in a little bit late. Do you take black and white photographs and color? I mean, the pieces are just so rich. So I'd love to find out a little bit about that.
Thank you. And we didn't talk about that earlier, so you okay?
Oh, yeah.
During the conversations I have with my friends, I'll take photographs. I do take everything in black and white, so I try to keep everything streamlined into the way that the finalized version of what I'm going to be creating is. So I don't take them in color and then convert them, and when I see them in my camera, it's all sort of how I want it to be at the end. And so from there, I take it, I do an underdrawing, I make that underdrawing, and then before I even start applying oil paint, a lot of like what you'll see in like the cursive that appears here, where it comes off as these more like energetic, sort of like dances of a word, those go actually underneath the oil paint. And so that's almost creating a historical note or like a foundation of my relationship to this person before I even paint them. And so thinking about like why it's illegible, is thinking about it more as, even writing the word Helen. You gotta write an H, and it takes so much effort to just get to 3 letters. It takes like, I want Helen to be able to read the H. I gotta write it and strike it. But then if like, I'm thinking about like, what does Helen mean to me, or what does our relationship how has it influenced my life, that actually comes out more of a dance. And so that's what those, and it's in everything. It's also in the ceramics, like in the larger ceramics, you'll see it carved into them. And so in the paintings, that sort of sets the foundation, and then I paint, and then that is then what you see. I always start with the background first, because that always sets the context, and then the person always, comes last, just so that they can be on top of everything. But then I'm also like saving the best for last, and when you strike that highlight on the eye, and then like you just get to like lay back and then go eat, that's the dream.
Kohshin, thank you.
Thank you.
So much for the thank you so much for the conversation.
Thank you. My pleasure.
Thank you for the work. Oh, I don't know if
He's
I can
always
allow
always
this last.
I was
moment.
waiting for it.
I thought you were being so well behaved, Mr. Finley. Please.
Dad.
Oh, man.
Who said it didn't? We've only been talking for an hour. You came in late.
If anyone doesn't understand what's happening right now, the artist's father has just asked a question.
So, to give people context, I did grow up in a factory. So, the front part of my parents' home was their design studio. So, they had a custom clothing line and also did like private label for Neiman Marcus, but at one point essentially did all of the outfits for the... It had their name. It had their name. Excuse me. Pardon me. But at like one point, they like did like every Laker player, and like did all the custom clothing from us. That's when all the basketball players had to wear suits. But then simultaneously, they all needed 100% Egyptian cotton outfits, and simultaneously, I was very fortunate because I think this was maybe I was like 12 or I was like 13, 14. Velour suits were the thing to have. And I didn't want one that said Sean John on it.
Right.
Even back then. I still don't want one now that says Sean John. But like that was like, I was like, hey, if like you guys give me one thing, I was like, I really want a custom velour suit. So that's like,
wow.
That was that. But, I think like even early on, like you just, they'd always like take us shopping, or even like they made us stuff, and we were always the test dummies, even just seeing if stuff works. But then like we would even like be the models for like some of the like the lookbooks.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's like a beautiful photo of my older brother in like a shopping cart, next to all these Kellogg's boxes, and he's like, you got his blue steel on, and he's has got his, and it's like, oh, that they welcomed us into the world. And even I remember like being so young and Shaq, we were walking down like the back alleys of the what was it? It was a Staples Center, I think, back then too. And I'm pulling on Shaq's hem, like, hey Shaq, and like this little kid, and he like bats my head, and I'm all proud and stuff. But it's like, oh yeah, he's wearing the things my parents made, and there's still, something so special about that. And yeah, I think you think that every kid grows up that way.
Right.
And I would like tell these stories, and people are like, dude, that's like fucking insane. And I'm like, oh, I thought it was just like cool. I just thought it was like the thing. And yeah, you just never know how that's going to influence. But yeah, it all started, my fashion sense and interest has evolved, so many times through the years. But yeah, definitely started with my dad and my mom, and yeah, no, it's not a coincidence at all. But I think that's like, I remember, I'm not done yet. He was not lying. One of my first jobs was working for a design studio that worked in the fashion industry. And so it was one of those things where first day in the office, he's like, "Oh, do you know how to do digital CADs of jackets?" And I was like, "Yeah, of course." I had no idea. And like he's literally on the other side of my computer screen, and I'm Googling on YouTube like how to do digital CAD of a jacket. And I literally just did it on the job. And I think talking about like the preparation, like even the ironing of clothes, even like when I'm at home, I remember when my dad was showing me how to iron a shirt when I was like a little kid. I don't even know how old I was, but I never forgot it. He's like, you always iron the front and the back, because you just never know when that jacket's gonna need to come off, and you don't want you only iron half of the shirt. So that was like, I think, part of like the preparation of just the day. I mean, and even just growing up in South Central, like you can't just like not be prepared for life to happen, because you never know what's outside. And so yeah, I mean, that's just one of those things that like, yeah, you get older and you're like, oh, that's why my mom positioned me in this way. That's why my dad positioned me in this way. That's why I feel this way when I da-da-da-da. And that's different than most other people that I know, because it's what's instilled in you, and it's, part of the environmental things that you just have to be aware of, even in sunny Los Angeles.
Well, one of the things I really like about Ron's last question is it's made me pay much more attention to the garments in the paintings. Mm-hmm. You have an extraordinary facility with painting fabric, with painting drape, with painting pattern and texture, right? So like I'm thinking that maybe that wasn't something you necessarily learned at college. Like you might, that some of that DNA might be deep in the mix here.
For sure, without question.
But I want to just thank you again. I want to thank you so much for the work. It takes a lot of energy and confidence and love and trust to put work out into public. And thank you for trusting us as your viewers to receive it, because it has really just been a great ride watching you get to this place.
My pleasure. And I know we're being recorded, so I want to like make sure to give you your flowers, I think, in public, because I've given you them many times in private. But I think that show you curated feedback that was at Jack Shaman, the school, came at such a pivotal time, I think, not only in my practice, but my life, and especially in the midst of the pandemic with so much uncertainty and not even being able to get out the house. But you've always been such a stalwart of not only my career, but my life. And I think even just seeing the potential of it, but also just seeing where it has been present in multiple versions of what I've done. And I think seeing me in not only saying, oh yeah, you should go there and be in that room, but like you put me in those rooms also. And I just want to make sure to say thank you, because that's, led part of the foundation of us being in this room. And just wanting to make sure to tell you that in front of other people for evidence. Now it's on record.
Thank you.
It's been
my absolute pleasure. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.